pioneer is someone who does it for the first time. Someone who goes into an area and provides something on the basis of faith and hope and vision and whatever it may be, and says, you know, if we were to bring this to this place, if we were to make this available, if we were to somehow do something that's never been done before, it could have quite an impact. One of the great stories in the whole telecommunications industry is the story of the first transoceanic cable that went across the North Atlantic. Started back in the middle of the 19th century, the 1850s more or less. Charles Wheatstone, who was one of the early inventors in the telecommunications industry, was one of the people involved in the design and the development of the idea. So what we had was a large cable, a large piece of cable that was basically rubber-sheathed copper wire that would be used to carry the signals for telegraph between North America and, of course, the Northern European continent. The problem was this stuff was heavy. When you're talking about the distance between Europe and North America, that's a lot of pounds. There were no ships at the time big enough to carry that much weight. So what they would do is half of it would go on a ship in the United States, or in Canada actually, and half of it would go on a ship in Europe, and they would sail toward each other and meet in the middle, and then presumably once they met, they'd connect them together and have a complete cable. The only problem was that in those days, their knowledge of weather patterns wasn't as good as their nautical skills. And it seemed that every time they'd meet in the middle, they'd meet right in the middle of a major storm in the North Atlantic, and they'd have to drop the cables and run for shore to save the ships. It happened several times. They would drop them, and of course, in those days, they didn't have the ability to go down and grapple them and bring them to the surface and repair them. They just abandoned them. Finally, they got it right. In 1858, two ships met, and in August, the ships met, they connected the two ends of the cable together, and for the first time in history, it was possible to actually transmit electronic signals, in this case, Morse code telegraph transmissions, between two continents separated by an ocean. An absolutely remarkable event.
Rolling back to the turn of the century, there were 10 or 12 farms that were in a very small geographic area that had a need to communicate. So they actually developed their own interconnected telephone network, and a gentleman named Mr. Farnsworth did that at the turn of the century, the early 1900s. Actually, back in the day, you could get a catalog from Montgomery Ward's, and aside from the poles, they would sell you wire, they would sell you phones, they would sell you connecting blocks, they would sell you everything that you needed, and you can order it right out of the catalog to build your own phone system. And that's what these folks did. And once they had that connectivity, then they had the ability to market their products, market their milk. So they wanted to be connected to the greater markets. Hence, Mr. Farnsworth crafts a connection to Essex Junction, which turns out to be the railhead. And that's where the trains are arriving, and that's where the milk is going to be shipped from. So now they have this business connectivity that links the farms actually to the shipping depot, and via the shipping depot to their customers. So this really is not only a social piece of technology, it is really enabling business in a very rural area.
Yo me enteré de que una zona cafetalera del país que tiene fama de producir el mejor café del mundo. Los campesinos, los agricultores, comenzaron a darse cuenta que sus cafetales debían ser administrados con una gran tecnología y conocimiento, y evitar que plagas o enfermedades del café aparecieran. Lo que pasa es que de pronto aparecía un pequeño gusano o algún hongo, y ellos no sabían qué hacer porque es tan largo. Resulta que una señora tenía una computadora, y entonces tomó una foto y dijo: usted nos puede ayudar con esto. Entonces tomó una foto y la puso en la computadora y la mandó a un centro de investigación de café. Entonces la señora se convirtió en una especie de agente donde todo el mundo va a buscarla, a decir: mándeme esta foto para ver qué es esto. O sea, eso ha sido un descubrimiento que se da por el azar, pero también porque existían las condiciones para que se diera. Y esta señora ahora es una representante de una empresa que comunica acerca de enfermedades. O sea, por supuesto, y esto ha tranquilizado a los campesinos, porque ahí una hectárea de café, un día de estos, un quintal de café se vendió en $2,000. Eso ha sido algo como vender oro, ¿verdad? O sea, todo tiene un impacto. Y todo el mundo, actores de la sociedad civil, están siendo beneficiados.
We're seeing those kinds of things happen now in the world of telecommunications because to a very large extent, the service providers that are suddenly delivering telecommunications to parts of the world that have never had it before are engaged in this incredible pioneering spirit because they believe that they can bring something very special to this part of the world and change the way this world operates.